frozen extraterrestrial dragons turn to a human war hero. His discovery shocks the galaxy. HFY. In the depths of space, where silence reigns supreme and darkness swallows entire civilizations, there exists a truth so profound that it would reshape everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. When humanity first reached for the stars, what we never expected was to discover that the most fearsome creatures in galactic legend, the ancient dragons that once terrorized 1,000 worlds, would one day kneel before a single human soldier. This is the story of Commander Marcus Chen, a war hero whose greatest battle wasn't fought with weapons or strategy, but with something far more powerful: understanding. His discovery in the frozen wastes of a forgotten moon didn't just shock the galaxy, it revealed that sometimes the most unlikely friendships can emerge from the coldest of circumstances, and that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons, but our capacity to see beyond fear and find connection. What began as a routine rescue mission would become the catalyst for the most significant shift in galactic politics in over a millennium. Because sometimes the universe has a way of bringing together exactly the right souls at exactly the right moment, even when those souls belong to species that were never supposed to meet. Commander Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, staring at the holographic display that showed nothing but empty space and the cold, lifeless moon designated as Kepler 442c. The distress signal had been weak, almost lost in the cosmic background radiation, but it was definitely there. 3 short pulses, 3 long, 3 short again. The universal distress code that every spacefaring species recognized. "Sir, we're getting some strange readings from the moon's surface," Lieutenant Sarah Torres reported from her station. The signal is coming from what appears to be some kind of structure buried under about 50 meters of ice. Marcus walked over to her console, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of the screens. At 45, he carried the weight of 3 major conflicts across his shoulders, each one leaving its mark in the form of scars and gray hair that had appeared far too early. The Proxima War, the vegan conflict, and most recently, the brutal campaign against the Zephyrian Empire had made him one of humanity's most decorated officers. But this mission was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be simple. "How long has that signal been broadcasting?" he asked. "That's the weird part, sir. According to our analysis, it's been going for approximately 2,000 years. The power source would have to be incredibly advanced to maintain that kind of output for so long." Marcus frowned. 2,000 years was before humanity had even left Earth's solar system. Whatever was down there predated human space travel by millennia. The moon itself was in a dead system, 3 jumps away from the nearest inhabited world. Nothing should be here except ice and rock. "Any life signs?" "Negative, sir. But the interference from whatever's generating that signal is making deep scans difficult. We'll need to get closer to be sure." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenobiologist, approached from where she'd been studying the preliminary data. "Commander, if I may suggest, we should be extremely cautious. A signal that old, with that kind of power source, suggests technology far beyond what most known species possess." Elena was right to be cautious. In his experience, ancient alien technology usually meant trouble. But they couldn't ignore a distress signal, no matter how old it might be. It went against everything the Human Federation stood for. "Very well. Take us into orbit. I want a full spectrum analysis of that structure before we commit to a surface mission." Marcus turned to his communications officer. "Rodriguez, send a message back to Fleet Command. Let them know we found something interesting." The Defiant was a small ship by fleet standards, designed for reconnaissance and rescue operations rather than combat. Marcus had specifically requested it for this mission because he wanted to avoid the intimidating presence of a battlecruiser. They were supposed to be investigating reports of pirates in the Outer Rim territories, not discovering ancient alien artifacts. As the ship moved into orbit around the ice-covered moon, more details became apparent. The structure beneath the ice was massive, easily the size of a small city. The architectural scans revealed something that made Elena gasp audibly. "Commander, you need to see this," she called out, her voice tight with excitement and concern. The holographic display now showed a detailed wireframe of the buried structure. It was clearly artificial, but the design was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Weeping curves and organic shapes suggested a building philosophy that valued beauty as much as function. But what caught Marcus's attention were the smaller structures scattered throughout the complex. "Are those hibernation chambers?" he asked. "That's my best guess," Elena replied, "but they're enormous. Whatever species built this must have been much larger than humans. The chambers suggest beings at least 4 times our size." Lieutenant Torres looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm detecting some kind of thermal activity deep within the structure. It's faint, but there's definitely something generating heat down there." Marcus felt the familiar tension that came before every difficult decision. His orders were to investigate unusual activity in this sector, but nobody had expected to find something like this. Ancient alien ruins were the stuff of archaeological expeditions, not military reconnaissance. "Commander," Elena said quietly, "if there are still life forms in those chambers after all this time, we could be looking at the discovery of a new species. This could change everything we know about galactic history. Or it could be a trap left by an extinct civilization to eliminate whoever finds it," countered Chief Engineer Roberts from his position near the environmental controls. "I've seen too many ancient defense systems that activate when disturbed." Marcus weighed the options. The safe choice would be to call for backup, wait for a proper archaeological team with military escort. But the distress signal was still broadcasting. If there were survivors down there, every moment could be crucial. "How long would it take to get a research team out here?" he asked. "At least 3 weeks," Elena replied. "Maybe longer if we have to wait for proper clearances and equipment." 3 weeks. If there were beings in those hibernation chambers, 3 weeks might be too long. Marcus had built his reputation on making the hard choices, on doing what was right rather than what was safe. "Prep the shuttlecraft for surface operations," he decided. "I want a full-away team: security, science, engineering, and medical. If there are survivors down there, we're going to help them." "Sir," Elena said hesitantly, "shouldn't we try to communicate first? Some kind of signal to let them know we're here?" "The universal greeting protocols," Torres suggested. "Mathematical sequences that any intelligent species should recognize." Marcus nodded. It was worth trying. Do it. Broadcast mathematical progressions, prime numbers, anything that might indicate intelligent contact. For the next 2 hours, they tried every communication protocol in the book. Mathematical sequences, pictographic representations, even music based on harmonic ratios that should be universal constants. Nothing worked. The distress signal continued its endless repetition, but there was no response to their attempts at contact. "It's possible their communication systems are damaged," Elena suggested. "Or maybe they're too weak to respond. If they've been in hibernation for 2,000 years, their systems might be operating on minimal power." Marcus stared at the readings. One more time. Deep below the ice, something was waiting. Something that had been calling for help for longer than human civilization had existed in space. Every instinct told him to proceed carefully, but his conscience wouldn't let him abandon potential survivors. "Prep the away team," he ordered finally. "We're going down." The shuttle bay was a flurry of activity as the team assembled their gear. Marcus had chosen his people carefully: Sergeant Williams for security, Dr. Vasquez for xenobiology, Engineer Patel for technical support, and Medic Thompson in case they found injured survivors. It was a small team, but large enough to handle most situations. As they loaded the shuttle, Elena approached him privately. "Marcus, I have to ask, are you sure about this? We have no idea what we're walking into down there." "Elena, in all my years of service, I've learned that sometimes you have to trust your instincts. That signal isn't a trap. It's a cry for help, and if there's even a chance that someone is alive down there, we have to try." She nodded, though he could see the concern in her eyes. "Just promise me we'll be careful. Ancient alien technology has a way of being unpredictable." "Careful is my middle name," Marcus replied with a slight smile. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen?" Elena gave him a look that suggested she could think of several hundred worst-case scenarios, but she climbed into the shuttle without further protest. The descent through the thin atmosphere of the moon was smooth and uneventful. The surface was a wasteland of ice and rock, with no sign that anything had ever lived here. But the sensors continued to show the massive structure beneath their feet, and the distress signal grew stronger as they approached the source. "There," Patel called out, pointing to a section of ice that looked different from the surrounding terrain. "That's where the signal is strongest. I'm detecting some kind of airlock or entrance about 30 meters down." They set down the shuttle near the coordinates and began the careful process of melting through the ice. The thermal lances made quick work of the frozen water, revealing what was unmistakably an artificial entrance. The door was massive, easily large enough for beings twice the size of humans, and covered in symbols that didn't match any known language. "The symbols appear to be some kind of warning or instruction," Elena observed as she recorded everything with her instruments. "But without a reference point, I can't begin to translate them." "Can we open it?" Marcus asked Patel. The engineer studied the door for several minutes, running his scanners over every surface. "It appears to respond to some kind of biometric scan, but it's designed for a completely different physiology. However, there's what looks like an emergency override panel here." "Emergency override?" "Yeah, like the kind of system you'd install if you needed outsiders to be able to enter in case of disaster. The symbols around it suggest it's meant for rescue operations." Marcus looked at the door, then at his team. "That's encouraging. It means whoever built this place considered the possibility that other species might need to help them." Patel worked carefully with the override panel, using a combination of electrical impulses and pattern recognition to activate the ancient mechanism. After several tense minutes, there was a deep rumbling sound, and the massive door began to slide open. The air that rushed out was stale but breathable, according to their atmospheric sensors. More importantly, it was warm. Something inside the structure was maintaining a livable environment after all these centuries. "Emergency lighting is activating," Patel reported, as soft blue lights began to illuminate a corridor beyond the entrance. "Whoever built this place, they were thinking ahead." The corridor was beautiful in its own alien way, with smooth curves and organic shapes that made it feel more grown than built. The ceiling was high enough to accommodate beings much taller than humans, and the floor was covered in some kind of crystalline material that seemed to glow softly from within. "The architecture is incredible," Elena whispered as she recorded everything. "It's completely unlike anything in our databases." This style suggests a species that valued harmony with their environment. As they moved deeper into the structure, the distress signal grew stronger. It was coming from somewhere ahead, in what their scans suggested was a large central chamber. The walls were covered in more of the unknown symbols, some of which seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "I'm getting multiple life signs ahead," Thompson reported, checking his medical scanner. "Faint, but definitely there. They appear to be in some kind of suspended animation." "How many?" Marcus asked. "Hard to say exactly. At least 20, maybe more. They're big, Commander. Much bigger than humans." The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The ceiling soared high above them, supported by pillars that looked like they had been grown rather than constructed. But it was the contents of the chamber that made them all stop in their tracks. Hibernation pods lined the walls, each one large enough to hold a creature the size of a small building. The pods were made of the same crystalline material as the floor, and through their transparent surfaces they could see the occupants. "Dear God," Elena whispered, They weren't just large, they were magnificent. The beings in the pods had the general shape of dragons from human mythology, but these were clearly real, living creatures. Their scales shimmered with an inner light, and even in hibernation there was something majestic about their presence. "Dragons," Sergeant Williams said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Actual dragons." Marcus approached one of the pods, studying the creature inside. It was easily 20 meters long from nose to tail, with wings that, when extended, would probably span twice that distance. Its scales were a deep blue-green color that seemed to shift and change as the light hit them from different angles. "The myths were real," Elena said, her scientific training warring with wonder. "Dragons actually exist." Thompson added, checking his scanner. "They're alive, weak, but alive. These hibernation systems have been keeping them in suspended animation for centuries." Marcus looked around the chamber, counting the pods. There were dozens of them, each containing a dragon in hibernation. Some of the pods were dark, their occupants long dead, but many still glowed with soft light, indicating active life support. "Why are they here?" Williams asked. "What happened to them?" Elena was studying the symbols around one of the pods, her translation software working overtime to find patterns. "If I'm reading this correctly, this might be some kind of refuge, a place they came to escape some kind of catastrophe. And they've been waiting here for 2,000 years for someone to find them," Marcus said quietly. "Someone to answer their distress call." He walked to the center of the chamber, where a larger pod sat on a raised platform. The dragon inside this one was different from the others, larger, more ornate, with scales that seemed to contain entire galaxies in their depths. Even in hibernation, there was something regal about this being. "This one's different," Elena observed. "The symbols around the pod suggest high status, maybe their leader." "Commander," Patel called from across the chamber, "I've found what looks like a control system. It's incredibly complex, but I think I might be able to interface with it using our universal translators." Marcus nodded. "Do it, but carefully. We don't want to accidentally harm them." As Patel worked with the alien technology, Marcus found himself drawn back to the central pod. The dragon inside seemed almost peaceful, as if it was simply sleeping rather than trapped in some kind of technological prison. There was something about its face, even in hibernation, that suggested intelligence and wisdom beyond anything he had encountered. "Commander," Elena said softly, approaching him, "whatever we do here, it's going to change everything. These beings, if they're truly dragons like the ones from Galactic Legends, they're supposed to be incredibly powerful. Some of the old stories say they once ruled entire star systems. And now they're refugees," Marcus replied. "Survivors of something terrible enough to force them into hibernation for 2 millennia. "I've got something," Patel announced. "The control system is responding to our translators. It looks like there's a wake-up protocol, but it requires authorization from someone the system recognizes as friendly." "How do we get authorization from a system that's 2,000 years old?" Williams asked. "Actually," Patel said, sounding surprised, "it might not be that difficult. The system seems to be designed to recognize certain behavioral patterns rather than specific genetic markers. It's looking for signs of what the dragons consider honorable conduct." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Honorable conduct? Based on what I can translate, it's looking for evidence of courage, compassion, and willingness to help others. The system was designed to prevent their enemies from awakening them, while allowing potential allies to offer assistance." Elena looked at Marcus meaningfully. A war hero who risks his life to answer a 2,000-year-old distress call probably qualifies. Somewhere in these calculations and alien protocols was the key to awakening an entire species that had been sleeping for longer than human recorded history. "What do I need to do?" he asked Patel. "Just place your hand on the scanner panel and let the system read your biometric data. It's designed to analyze neural patterns that indicate altruistic behavior." Marcus hesitated for just a moment. Once he did this, there would be no going back. But looking around the chamber at the sleeping dragons, he knew there was really no choice. They had come here seeking help, and he was going to give it to them. He placed his hand on the alien scanner and waited. The device hummed softly, and he felt a strange tingling sensation as it analyzed not just his physical characteristics, but somehow seemed to look deeper into his memories and motivations. The scanning process took nearly 5 minutes. When it was complete, the symbols around the chamber began to glow more brightly, and a deep, resonant tone filled the air. The hibernation pods started to hum with increased activity as their systems began the careful process of awakening their occupants. "Commander," Thompson called out urgently, "the dragons are starting to wake up. Their vital signs are strengthening." Marcus stepped back from the control panel and looked around the chamber. After 2,000 years of waiting, the dragons were about to open their eyes to find humans standing in their sanctuary. He just hoped that when they did, they would see friends rather than threats. The first dragon to awaken was one of the smaller ones, though even at 15 meters in length, it was still an imposing sight. Its eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that shifted between gold and silver like liquid metal. For several long moments it remained perfectly still, as if trying to understand where it was and what had happened. Marcus held his breath, every muscle in his body tense. His hand hovered near his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless against a creature of this size. Around him, his team waited in similar silence, watching as 2,000 years of hibernation came to an end. The dragon's massive head turned toward them, and Marcus felt the full weight of an ancient intelligence studying him. Those golden eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of experience, of knowledge accumulated over lifespans that dwarfed human existence. When the dragon finally moved, it was with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. It sat up slowly in its pod, careful movements suggesting either weakness from the long hibernation or deliberate caution. Then it spoke, and Marcus was surprised to hear his universal translator rendering the words in perfect English. "Who dares disturb our sanctuary?" The voice was deep and resonant, carrying undertones that seemed to vibrate through the chamber itself. But despite the formal words, there was more curiosity than anger in the tone. Marcus stepped forward, his hands empty and visible. "I am Commander Marcus Chen of the Human Federation. We received your distress signal and came to offer assistance." The dragon's head tilted slightly, a remarkably human gesture of confusion. "Human? This word is unknown to us. And what distress signal do you speak of?" "The emergency beacon that's been broadcasting from this location for 2,000 years, Elena interjected, then immediately looked concerned that she had spoken out of turn. The dragon's eyes widened, and for the first time Marcus saw what might have been fear in those ancient depths. 2,000 years? We have slept for 2,000 years? Around the chamber, other dragons were beginning to stir. The soft humming of the hibernation pods grew louder as more systems activated, but the process was clearly designed to be gradual. Only a few dragons at a time would wake, preventing chaos or confusion. "I am Zephyr of the Azure Winds," the first dragon said, executing what was unmistakably a formal bow despite his position in the pod. "I served as guardian of this sanctuary. If what you say is true, then our situation is far more desperate than we feared." "What happened here?" Marcus asked gently. "Why did your people enter hibernation?" Zephyr's expression grew dark, and his scales seemed to dim slightly. "The Void Bringers came to our worlds, ancient enemies from the dark spaces between stars. They sought to drain the life from every planet we called home, to turn our empire into lifeless husks drifting in space." Another dragon was awakening in a nearby pod, this one slightly larger with scales of deep red that seemed to contain flickering flames. As it gained consciousness, it immediately focused on Zephyr, speaking in rapid tones that the translator struggled to keep up with. "Elder Zephyr, what has happened? Where are we? And who are these creatures?" Peace, Ember of the Crimson Flight. Zephyr replied calmly. We are in the sanctuary, and we have slept far longer than intended. These beings are called humans, and they claim to have answered our distress call. Ember turned to study the human team with obvious suspicion. Humans? They are so small. How did such tiny creatures manage to reach our sanctuary? Size isn't everything, Marcus said with a slight smile. Sometimes small can be an advantage. You speak truth, small one, Zephyr acknowledged with what might have been approval. But tell us, what has become of the galaxy while we slept? Do the Voidbringers still ravage the stars? Marcus exchanged glances with Elena, who had been frantically checking their historical databases. Doctor? Commander? I'm not finding any references to Voidbringers in our historical records. There are some gaps in galactic history from around 2,000 years ago, but nothing about an enemy matching that description. Then perhaps they were defeated, Ember suggested hopefully. Or perhaps they moved on to other galaxies when they could not find us. The Voidbringers do not simply leave. They consume until there is nothing left to consume. If they are gone, it is because something stopped them. More dragons were awakening now, and the chamber filled with their voices as they greeted each other and tried to understand their situation. Marcus noticed that despite their obvious confusion and concern, they maintained a formal courtesy with each other that spoke of deep cultural traditions. Elder Zephyr, one of the newly awakened dragons, called out, "Should we wake Asterix, the star-touched? This situation seems to require her wisdom." Zephyr looked toward the central pod where the largest dragon still slumbered. "Not yet, young Tempest. Let us understand our situation better before we disturb the Ancient One's rest." Marcus found himself fascinated by the dragon's social structure. Even in crisis, they maintained clear hierarchies and showed deep respect for their elders. It reminded him of the best aspects of military discipline, but with something more profound underneath. "Commander," Thompson whispered urgently, "I'm picking up some concerning readings from several of the pods. Some of the dragons show signs of extended hibernation syndrome. They're going to need medical attention." Marcus nodded and stepped closer to Zephyr. "Some of your people may need medical assistance. Our doctor would like to help if you'll allow it." Zephyr studied Thompson carefully. "Your healer is very small to tend to beings of our size. Sometimes the smallest hands can work the greatest healing," Thompson replied diplomatically. "I may not be able to treat you the same way I would a human, but I can monitor your vital signs and help your hibernation systems function more efficiently. You would help us, though we are strangers to you?" This question came from Ember, whose suspicious nature seemed to be warring with desperate hope. "It's what we do," Marcus said simply. "When someone needs help, we try to provide it." "Fascinating," Zephyr mused. "In our experience, most species help only when there is benefit to themselves. What do you gain by assisting us?" Elena stepped forward. "Knowledge. The chance to learn from an ancient civilization. The possibility of friendship between our peoples. And," Marcus added firmly, "the simple knowledge that we did what was right." Zephyr and Ember exchanged a look that seemed to communicate volumes. Finally, Zephyr nodded. "We accept your offer of assistance, Commander Marcus Chen of the humans, but I must warn you, our awakening may draw attention from enemies who have long sought our location." What kind of enemies?" Sergeant Williams asked, his military instincts clearly triggered. "The Voidbringers were not the only ones who hunted us," Ember explained grimly. "There were others who coveted our knowledge, our technology, our very essence. If word spreads that dragons walk the galaxy again, they will come." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ice moon's atmosphere. "How much time do you think we have?" "That depends on how far our energy signatures can be detected now that we are awakening," Zephyr replied. "Hours, perhaps. Maybe days, if we are fortunate." "Then we need to move fast," Marcus decided. "My ship has defensive capabilities, and we can call for reinforcements from the Human Federation. But first, we need to get your people stable and figure out how many of you are left. Over the next several hours, a remarkable transformation took place in the ancient sanctuary. The human team worked alongside the awakening dragons, using a combination of human technology and dragon knowledge to assess the situation. Thompson established monitoring stations for the dragons still in hibernation, while Patel worked with the dragon engineers to understand their systems. The news was mixed. Of the 63 hibernation pods in the sanctuary, 47 still contained living dragons. The others had failed over the centuries. Their occupants lost to time and mechanical failure. It was a tragic loss, but Zephyr assured them that it was far better than they had dared hope. We expected that perhaps a dozen might survive the Great Sleep, he explained to Marcus as they stood before one of the dark pods. To find 47 alive is beyond our most optimistic projections. What about your leader? Elena asked. Asterix, the star-touched. Should we wake her? Zephyr looked toward the central pod with deep reverence. Asterix is more than our leader. She is the keeper of our most ancient knowledge, the guardian of secrets that predate many civilizations. Her hibernation pod is the most sophisticated of all, and she may have been in deeper sleep than the rest of us. Meaning that awakening her carries risks. If the process fails, we lose not just our greatest leader, but centuries of accumulated wisdom. Yet, if our enemies truly are coming, we may have no choice. The decision was taken out of their hands when alarms began sounding from the Defiant in orbit. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communicators with barely controlled panic. Commander, we're detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Unknown configuration, moving fast, and they're heading this way. Marcus cursed under his breath. How many ships? At least a dozen, sir. Maybe more. They're using some kind of sensor masking that's making it hard to get exact counts. Zephyr's expression grew grim. It appears our fears were justified. The awakening has drawn attention. Can you identify the ships? Marcus asked Rodriguez. Negative, sir. The designs don't match anything in our databases, but based on their energy signatures, these things are armed for war. Time to arrival? At their current speed? Roughly 6 hours, sir? Marcus looked around the chamber at the dragons, most of whom were still weak from hibernation. Zephyr, can your people fight in their current condition? Some of us, perhaps, but we are far from our full strength. And this sanctuary was built to hide, not to withstand siege. Then we need to wake Asterix, Ember declared, having overheard the conversation. If we are to face the ancient enemies, we need the Ancient One's wisdom. Several other dragons voiced agreement, but Zephyr looked troubled. The risk of losing her is great, interrupted a new voice. But the risk of facing our enemies without her is greater. The speaker was one of the older dragons who had awakened in the past hour. His scales were silver with veins of deep blue that seemed to pulse with their own light. Marcus noticed that even Zephyr showed deference to this newcomer. Sage Orion speaks wisdom, Zephyr acknowledged. But the choice is not ours alone. Commander Chen, your people are now part of this conflict, whether you intended it or not. Your opinion carries weight in this decision. Marcus looked around the chamber, weighing options. On one hand, attempting to wake the dragon leader carried obvious risks. On the other hand, they were about to face an unknown enemy with unknown capabilities. They needed every advantage they could get. Wake her, he decided. If there's a chance she can help us understand what we're up against, we have to take it. Sage Orion nodded approvingly. The small human shows wisdom beyond his size. Very well. Let us wake the star-touched and pray that her knowledge can save us all. The process of awakening Asterix was far more complex than the others. Her hibernation pod was connected to additional systems that seemed to monitor not just her physical state but something deeper. Patel worked carefully with the dragon technicians, following protocols that were clearly ancient even by dragon standards. The Star-Touched's pod is integrated with the Sanctuary's central knowledge archive, explained one of the Dragon engineers. She has been serving as a living library while she slept, her mind connected to all our accumulated wisdom. That's incredible, Elena breathed. She's been maintaining your entire cultural database for 2,000 years? It is the burden and honor of the Star-Touched, Sage Orion confirmed. Each generation, one is chosen to carry the memories of all who came before. The awakening process took nearly an hour, with careful monitoring at every stage. When Asterix's eyes finally opened, Marcus felt the full weight of truly ancient intelligence focusing on him. Her scales seemed to contain the light of distant stars, and her eyes held depths that spoke of knowledge accumulated over millennia. She sat up slowly, her movements graceful despite her enormous size. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very structure of the sanctuary. I sense great changes in the currents of time, she said without preamble. The galaxy has shifted while we slept, and you, small ones, you are something new, something that was not here when we entered the Great Sleep. Ancient One, Zephyr said formally, we are honored by your awakening. These are humans, a young species that answered our distress call. They have aided us greatly, and now face danger alongside us. Asterix studied Marcus with those star-filled eyes, a young species that shows the courage to answer calls for help from strangers. Interesting. There is much potential in such beings. Can you tell us about our enemies? Marcus asked directly. Ships are approaching this system, and we need to know what we're dealing with. Show me, Asterix commanded. Elena quickly activated her portable hologram projector, displaying the sensor readings from the approaching fleet. Asterix studied the data for several long moments, her expression growing increasingly grave. I had hoped never to see those signatures again, she said finally. Those are Shadow Maw ships, not the Voidbringers themselves, but their servants and allies. If they have found us, it means our ancient enemies may not be as defeated as we hoped. What are we dealing with? Marcus asked. The Shadow Maws are raiders and scavengers who feed on the remnants of civilizations destroyed by the Voidbringers. They are numerous, vicious, and utterly without honor. They will seek to capture us alive to sell to their masters, or failing that, to harvest our bodies for their technology. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Marcus spoke. Then we fight. My ship may be small, but it has weapons and trained crew, and we can call for reinforcements. Your loyalty honors you, Commander Chen, Asterix said gravely. But the Shadow Maws number in the thousands across the galaxy. Even if you summon your entire fleet, I fear it may not be enough. Then what do you suggest? Asterix was quiet for a long moment, her eyes seeming to look through time itself. There is another option. Dangerous, desperate, but possible. The sanctuary holds more than hibernation chambers. There are weapons here, tools of war left from the great battles against the Voidbringers. But activating them will require a bond of trust between our peoples that has never existed before. What kind of bond? Marcus asked, though something in his chest was already answering the question. The ancient partnership, Zephyr breathed, understanding dawning in his voice. You speak of the old bonds, Ancient One, but no dragon has taken a bond partner in over 3 millennia. The old bonds? Elena asked. Asterix nodded slowly. Long ago, before the Great Wars, dragons would form partnerships with exceptional individuals from other species, a sharing of mind and spirit that allowed both partners to achieve things impossible alone. It was how we defended the galaxy in the ancient times. And you think this could help now? Marcus asked. The Sanctuary's greatest weapons can only be activated by bonded pairs, Asterix explained. Dragon wisdom combined with the unique qualities of a partner species. If the legends I read in your mind are true, humans possess qualities that could make such bonds extraordinarily powerful. What qualities? Williams asked suspiciously. Asterix looked directly at Marcus. Courage in the face of impossible odds, the willingness to sacrifice for strangers, the ability to find hope in the darkest moments. These are rare gifts in the galaxy, Commander Chen, and they may be exactly what we need to survive. Marcus felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders once again. Accept a mystical bond with an ancient dragon to activate weapons he didn't understand, or face a fleet of enemy ships with nothing but conventional weapons and hope. If I agree to this bond, he said carefully, what exactly does it involve? A joining of minds and spirits, Asterix replied. You would retain your individuality, but we would share thoughts, emotions, and capabilities. You would gain access to dragon knowledge and power, while I would benefit from human innovation and determination. And the risks? If the bond is rejected by either mind, both participants could be severely damaged or killed. And once formed, the bond is permanent. We would be linked until one of us dies. The chamber fell completely silent. In the distance, Marcus could hear the soft humming of the hibernation systems and the quiet voices of his crew maintaining their equipment. It was a peaceful sound that contrasted sharply with the magnitude of the choice before him. Commander, Elena said quietly, you don't have to do this. There might be other options. Like what? Marcus replied. Running? Abandoning the dragons to their enemies? That's not who we are. The choice is yours, Marcus Chen, Asterix said gently, but know that whatever you decide, you have already proven yourself worthy of dragon respect. You answered our call when you could have ignored it. You offered aid when you could have taken advantage. These actions speak to the quality of your character. Marcus looked around the chamber at the dragons who had become his allies in the span of a few short hours. He thought about the approaching fleet and the crew of the Defiant who would fight beside him regardless of the odds. Most of all, he thought about the simple truth that sometimes doing what was right required risking everything. I accept, he said firmly. Let's form this bond and save both our peoples. Asterix smiled, an expression both beautiful and terrible on her draconic features. Then let us begin, partner. The Shadow Maws will learn that dragons do not go quietly into extinction, especially when they fight alongside heroes. The bonding chamber was located deep within the sanctuary, through corridors that Marcus hadn't even known existed. Teddy. As Asterix led him deeper into the ancient structure, the very walls seemed to come alive with flowing symbols that pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. The air itself felt charged with possibilities and ancient power. The chamber was built specifically for this purpose, Asterix explained as they walked. Our ancestors understood that the greatest challenges required the unity of different perspectives, different strengths. Dragons alone were powerful, but sometimes rigid in their thinking. Other species brought innovation, flexibility, courage that even we sometimes lacked. Elena walked beside them, her scanner working overtime to record everything. The energy readings here are incredible. It's like the walls themselves are some kind of organic computer system. Not entirely wrong, Asterix confirmed. The sanctuary exists at the intersection of technology and what humans might call magic, though we simply consider it advanced science. The bonding chamber will facilitate the connection between Marcus's neural patterns and my own. Behind them, Zephyr and several other dragons followed at a respectful distance, while Marcus's team maintained their protective formation. The approaching enemy fleet was still hours away, but everyone felt the pressure of time running short. Ancient One, Zephyr called out, are you certain this human can handle the bond? No offense intended, Commander Chen, but your species is very young, and the mental strain of joining with a dragon consciousness has broken stronger minds. His mind is different, Asterix replied thoughtfully. I have touched the surface of his thoughts, and I sense unusual resilience. He has faced horrors in war and maintained his compassion. He has led others through impossible situations and never lost his sense of duty. These qualities suggest a mental flexibility that could adapt to the bond. Marcus felt a strange mixture of honor and nervousness at this assessment. What exactly will I experience during the bonding process? Initially, confusion. Asterix admitted honestly. You will suddenly have access to memories spanning centuries, knowledge of technologies your species hasn't invented, and sensory input from organs you don't possess. But gradually, your mind will learn to process the information without being overwhelmed. They entered a circular chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The walls curved upward to form a perfect dome, and every surface was covered in crystalline formations that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. In the center of the room stood two platforms, one sized for a dragon, the other for a human. The crystals contain the accumulated experience of every successful bond in dragon history, Asterix explained. They will help guide the process and prevent the most dangerous forms of mental feedback. How many successful bonds have there been? Elena asked, her scientific curiosity overriding the danger of the situation. Over our history, perhaps 1,000. But the last one was formed over 3,000 years ago. We are walking a path that has not been taken for longer than most civilizations have existed. Marcus stepped onto the human platform and immediately felt a tingling sensation throughout his body. The crystals around the chamber began to glow more brightly, responding to his presence. Before we begin, Asterix said seriously, I must tell you that what we are about to do will change you permanently. You will retain your human nature, but you will also become something more. Are you prepared for that? Marcus thought about his crew waiting on the Defiant, about the dragons who had trusted him enough to accept his help, about the enemy fleet approaching with unknown intentions. I've spent my entire military career becoming whatever was necessary to protect others. This is just the next step. Asterix moved onto her own platform, her massive form somehow fitting perfectly within the crystalline framework. Then let us begin. Focus your mind on your strongest memories, your deepest convictions. These will serve as anchors during the joining. The moment Asterix activated the bonding chamber, Marcus felt his world explode into impossible complexity. Suddenly, he could see not just through his own eyes, but through senses he had never imagined. He could perceive the electromagnetic spectrum from radio waves to gamma rays, could feel the gravitational pull of distant stars, could sense the life force of every being in the sanctuary. But more overwhelming than the sensory input was the flood of memories that weren't his own. He experienced centuries of dragon history in compressed moments, great battles against the Void Bringers, the glory days when dragons had ruled benevolently over vast star systems, the desperate decision to enter hibernation rather than face extinction. Through it all, he felt Asterix's presence in his mind, steady and reassuring. Her ancient wisdom helped him navigate the chaos of information, teaching him how to compartmentalize the dragon memories while maintaining his own identity. Breathe, Marcus. Her voice echoed in his thoughts. Let the knowledge flow through you without trying to contain it all. You are a river, not a dam. Gradually, the overwhelming rush of information began to settle into manageable streams. Marcus found that he could access dragon knowledge when he needed it without being consumed by it. More importantly, he began to sense Asterix's own experience of the bond. To her, his mind was a revelation, where dragon thoughts followed ancient patterns laid down over millennia. Human thinking was chaotic, improvisational, startlingly creative. She experienced his memories of war not as a series of strategic decisions, but as moments of desperate innovation, impossible courage, and refusal to accept defeat even when logic suggested surrender was the only option. Fascinating, she murmured, both aloud and in his mind. Your species approaches problems from directions we would never consider. This could be incredibly valuable. Are you okay? Elena called out from the edge of the chamber. Your vital signs are fluctuating wildly. We're fine, Marcus replied, surprised to hear his own voice harmonizing with Asterix's deeper tones. The bond is taking hold. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus became aware of the sanctuary's true nature. It wasn't just a hiding place. It was a fortress designed to be operated by bonded pairs. The weapon systems that Asterix had mentioned weren't separate devices but integral parts of the structure itself, powered by the combination of dragon energy and partner innovation. "Show me," he requested through their mental link. Asterix shared the knowledge directly, and Marcus gasped as he understood what they had at their disposal. The sanctuary could transform into a mobile battle platform, armed with weapons that could crack planets and defenses that could withstand the assault of entire fleets. But it required precise coordination between dragon power and partner tactical thinking to function. The Shadow Maws have no idea what they're approaching, Marcus realized. Indeed, but activating these systems will require us to work in perfect harmony. "Are you ready to see what we can achieve together?" Marcus nodded, feeling more confident than he had any right to feel given the circumstances. Through the bond, he could sense Asterix's vast knowledge and power, while she drew upon his tactical experience and innovative thinking. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. They stepped down from the platforms, and Marcus was amazed to discover that his physical capabilities had been enhanced. He could move faster, think quicker, and his reflexes had been sharpened to superhuman levels. At the same time, he could feel Asterix drawing upon his memories of space combat, integrating human tactical doctrine with dragon strategic wisdom. "Ancient One," Zephyr said reverently as they emerged from the bonding chamber, "the change in both of you is remarkable. I have never seen such a successful integration." "The bond is strong," Asterix confirmed, her mental voice echoing Marcus's agreement. "Stronger than I had dared hope." Commander Chen's mind has adapted to the connection with remarkable speed. Elena ran her scanner over both of them, her readings showing impossible energy patterns. "The quantum entanglement between your neural systems is unlike anything I've ever seen. You're literally sharing consciousness while maintaining individual identities, which means we need to get to the command center and prepare our defenses," Marcus said, his voice carrying new harmonics that reflected his bond with Asterix. "The Shadowlaw fleet is getting closer, and we have work to do." What had appeared to be decorative crystalline formations were actually sophisticated control interfaces, designed for bonded pairs to operate simultaneously. Marcus found that he could interface with the systems through touch while Asterix provided the power and knowledge necessary to activate them. "This is incredible," Batel breathed as he watched the transformation of the sanctuary. The entire structure is reconfiguring itself. Through the bond, Marcus and Asterix worked to bring ancient systems online. Weapon arrays that had slept for millennia awakened with deadly purpose, while defensive shields spread outward to protect not just the sanctuary, but the entire moon. Most impressive of all, the sanctuary itself began to rise from its icy tomb, supported by gravitational manipulation technology that human science was centuries from developing. "Commander," Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communicator, "are you seeing this? The entire moon is lighting up with energy signatures." "What's happening down there?" "We're preparing to defend ourselves," Marcus replied calmly. "How long until the Shadow Maws arrive?" 2 hours, sir. But Commander, whatever you're doing, it's showing up on sensors across half the galaxy." "Teddy, we're detecting ships changing course to investigate these energy readings." Through their shared consciousness, Marcus and Asterix exchanged concern. If the sanctuary's activation was drawing attention from across the galaxy, they might face more than just the Shadowmaw fleet. "Let them come," Asterix said grimly. "It has been too long since the dragons showed the galaxy what we are capable of. Perhaps it is time for a reminder." The next hour was spent in frantic preparation. The dragons who were well enough to fight took positions throughout the sanctuary's weapon bays, while Marcus's team coordinated with the ship in orbit to establish a unified defense. Through the bond, Marcus found that he could simultaneously coordinate human tactical doctrine with dragon combat instincts, creating strategies that neither species could have developed alone. The Shadow Maws fight like scavengers, Asterix explained as they reviewed the approaching fleet's formation. They rely on numbers and brutal assault tactics, expecting their enemies to be weakened prey. They have never faced a fully operational dragon sanctuary with bonded defenders. Their mistake, Marcus replied, studying the tactical display. But we shouldn't underestimate them. Any species that survived the wars that destroyed your empire must have some significant capabilities. Through the bond, they developed a battle plan that combined the best of both their tactical traditions. The sanctuary would appear helpless until the enemy committed to their attack, then reveal its true nature with devastating effect. Meanwhile, the Defiant would coordinate with the awakened dragons to strike at the enemy fleet's weaknesses. Contact approaching, Taurus announced from the Defiant. The Shadow Maw fleet is dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Marcus felt his enhanced senses reaching out through the sanctuary's sensor array, analyzing the enemy ships with capabilities far beyond human technology. What he saw made him grateful for the bond's calming influence, because the Shadow Maw fleet was even larger than their initial estimates had suggested. 57 ships, he reported to his team. Heavy cruisers, assault vessels, and what appears to be at least 3 dreadnoughts. They definitely came prepared for a fight. But not the fight they're going to get, Asterix added with grim satisfaction. The enemy fleet moved into the system with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Through the sanctuary's sensors, Marcus could monitor their communications, translated automatically by the Dragon systems. The energy readings are even stronger than we detected from deep space. One Shadow Maw captain reported, "Whatever the dragons have hidden here, it must be incredibly valuable." "Remember," replied what seemed to be the fleet commander, "we need the dragons alive if possible. Dead dragons are worth credits, but living dragons can be sold to the Voidbringer collectors for 100 times more." Marcus felt Asterix's rage at this casual discussion of their enslavement, and through the bond, she experienced his own cold anger at the enemy's arrogance. Together, they prepared to show the Shadow Maws exactly how wrong their assumptions were. "They're targeting the sanctuary," Rodriguez reported. "Multiple ships moving into attack formation." "Let them come closer," Marcus said calmly. "We want them fully committed before we reveal our capabilities." Through their shared awareness, Marcus and Asterix watched the enemy fleet position itself for what they clearly expected to be an easy victory. The Shadow Maw ships were impressive in their own right, bristling with weapons and armored for extended conflict. But they were designed to fight weakened enemies, not a fully operational dragon fortress. "Now?" Asterix asked through their mental link. "Now?" Marcus confirmed. The transformation of the sanctuary from apparent ruin to active battle station was devastating in its sudden completeness. Weapon arrays that had been hidden beneath ice and rock emerged with deadly purpose, while the entire structure rose into the moon's thin atmosphere on columns of controlled gravity. The first salvo from the sanctuary's weapons caught the Shadow Maw fleet completely off guard. Energy beams that could crack continents lanced out across space, overwhelming the shields of 3 heavy cruisers in seconds. Return fire from the enemy fleet struck harmlessly against defensive barriers that had protected dragon worlds for millennia. "Impossible!" The Shadow Maw commander's voice crackled across their communications. "Intelligence said this was just a hibernation facility." "Intelligence was wrong," Marcus replied, opening a channel to the enemy fleet. "This is Commander Marcus Chen of the Human Federation, operating in alliance with the Dragon Sanctuary. You have 60 seconds to withdraw from this system or face the consequences." The response was a concentrated barrage from the entire enemy fleet, energy weapons and kinetic projectiles converging on the sanctuary from every direction. Marcus felt the impact through his bond with Asterix, but the ancient defensive systems held firm. "I believe that was their answer," Asterix observed dryly. "Then let's give 'em ours," Marcus replied. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration of what bonded pairs could accomplish. Marcus provided tactical coordination, while Asterix channeled the vast power needed to operate the sanctuary's weapons. Together, they orchestrated a defense that was both devastating and precise, targeting enemy ships' critical systems rather than simply destroying them wholesale. The Defiant joined the battle, its smaller weapons adding to the confusion as human tactics proved just as confusing to the Shadow Maws as dragon technology. Captain Torres executed maneuvers that seemed impossible to the enemy commanders, while the ship's weapons targeted specific vulnerabilities that Marcus identified through the Sanctuary sensors. Within 30 minutes, the Shadow Maw fleet was in full retreat. Half their ships had been disabled or destroyed, and the remainder were fleeing the system as fast as their engines could carry them. The victory was so complete that it seemed almost anticlimactic. "Well," Elena said as they watched the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace, "that was considerably more effective than I expected." "The bond worked perfectly," Zephyr observed with wonder. "I have never seen such coordination between dragon power and partner strategy." But Marcus felt a nagging concern through his connection with Asterix. "This victory was too easy," he said aloud. "The Shadow Maws are scavengers, not warriors. They wouldn't attack a position like this unless they were confident of victory." "You think this was a test?" Asterix asked through their mental link. "I think this was reconnaissance," Marcus replied grimly. "They wanted to see what we were capable of. Now they know, and they'll report back to whoever sent them." "The Voidbringers," Asterix said with certainty. "If they still exist, they now know that dragons walk the galaxy again, and they know we have found allies." Through their bond, Marcus felt the weight of ancient fears and terrible knowledge. The Shadow Maws had been just the beginning. If the Voidbringers were truly still active somewhere in the galaxy, their victory today had just painted a target on both their species. "Then we'd better prepare for a real war," Marcus said quietly, "because I have a feeling this was just the opening move." 3 weeks after the Shadow Maw attack, the Sanctuary had become the center of unprecedented activity. Ships from across the Human Federation arrived daily, bringing supplies, personnel, and desperately needed military support. The dragons, now fully awakened and recovered from their long hibernation, worked alongside human engineers to integrate technologies that had been separated by millennia. Marcus stood in the newly expanded command center, watching through enhanced senses as the joint human-dragon fleet took shape in orbit around the ice moon. 47 dragons had survived hibernation, and each had formed bonds with carefully selected human partners. The process wasn't always successful. 3 attempts had failed, resulting in temporary mental trauma for both participants, but when it worked, the results were remarkable. "The integration is proceeding faster than anyone expected," Admiral Sarah Vance reported as she reviewed the tactical displays. Vance had arrived a week ago with a full battle group, and despite initial skepticism about dragon-human cooperation, she had quickly recognized the potential of the bonded pairs. Through his connection with Asterix, Marcus could sense the vast network of communication that now linked all the bonded pairs. It was like being part of a vast, multifaceted intelligence that could process information and coordinate actions at speeds impossible for either species alone. "The humans adapt remarkably quickly," Asterix observed through their private mental link. "Their minds are more flexible than we anticipated. Even the failed bonding attempts taught us valuable lessons about compatibility." Elena approached from where she had been studying the latest intelligence reports. Her expression was troubled, which immediately caught Marcus's attention through their enhanced emotional sensitivity. "What is it?" he asked. "We've been analyzing the Shadow Maw ship wreckage and their communication logs," she began. "The data suggests they weren't just random raiders. They were specifically sent to test our capabilities and report back." "Report back to whom?" Admiral Vance asked. "That's the concerning part," Elena continued. "The communication logs contain references to something called the Prime Collective. From what we can translate, it appears to be a governing body that commands multiple Shadow Maw fleets, Through the bond, Marcus felt Asterix's immediate recognition and fear. The ancient dragon's memories flooded through their connection, showing him images of dark space and ships that seemed to absorb light itself. "The Prime Collective," Asterix said aloud, her voice carrying harmonics of dread. "I had hoped that name was lost to history. They are not the Voidbringers themselves, but something almost worse. They're children." "Children?" Admiral Vance asked. "Created beings," Asterix explained. "The Voidbringers consumed life and energy, but they also experimented with it. The Prime Collective was their attempt to create a species that could govern conquered territories while they moved on to new targets." Marcus felt his blood run cold as more memories flowed through the bond. The Prime Collective wasn't just another enemy. They were designed specifically to hunt and capture species with unique abilities, cataloging and studying them before delivering them to their Voidbringer creators. "If the Prime Collective is involved," Zephyr said grimly from his position near the tactical displays, "then the Voidbringers themselves may not be far behind. The Collective serves as their advance force, preparing targets for consumption." "How long do we have?" Admiral Vance asked. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus and Asterix consulted ancient dragon records and compared them with current intelligence. The answer was not encouraging. Based on the Shadow Maw communication logs, a Prime Collective investigative force could arrive within days, Marcus reported. "If they determine that we represent a significant threat or opportunity, they'll call for a full assault fleet." "Numbers?" Vance asked. "Conservative estimate," Asterix replied through their bond, her ancient knowledge providing the framework for Marcus's tactical analysis. 3 to 500 ships, possibly more if they decide we're worth the investment." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Even with their enhanced capabilities, the combined human-dragon fleet numbered fewer than 100 ships. The mathematics were daunting. "However," Marcus continued, feeling Asterix's confidence flowing through their connection, "they won't be expecting the level of integration we've achieved. Every encounter they've had with dragons has been against individual beings or small groups. They have no experience fighting a fully coordinated dragon-human alliance." "That's our advantage," agreed Commander Thorne, Zephyr's human partner. The bond between the tactical dragon and the human strategic coordinator had proven particularly effective at fleet coordination. "We can achieve levels of coordination that will seem impossible to them." Admiral Vance studied the tactical projections. "What are you proposing?" "We don't wait for them to come to us," Marcus explained, sharing Asterix's strategic insight. "The Prime Collective operates from predictable patterns. They'll establish a forward base in this system, then probe our defenses before committing to a full assault." "So we hit them while they're setting up," Vance concluded. "Prevent them from establishing their foothold." "Exactly, but we'll need to coordinate the attack perfectly. Dragons can provide power and advanced technology, while humans provide tactical flexibility and innovation. The bonded pairs will serve as force multipliers, but we'll also need the non-bonded humans and dragons to work in perfect harmony. Over the next 72 hours, the joint fleet prepared for what would either be a stunning victory or a catastrophic defeat. The dragons shared technology that allowed human ships to operate at energy levels previously impossible, while human tactical doctrine was adapted to take advantage of dragon capabilities. Marcus found himself at the center of it all. His bond with Asterix allowing him to coordinate between species and serve as a living bridge between dragon wisdom and human innovation. Through the network of bonded pairs, information flowed instantly across the entire fleet, creating a level of coordination that bordered on telepathic. "Contact," reported Lieutenant Torres from her position aboard the Defiant. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Configurations match Prime Collective profiles from Dragon archives. Through enhanced sensors, Marcus watched the enemy fleet materialize in space. 50 ships, dark and angular, moving with the methodical precision of artificial intelligences. But something about them seemed wrong, even beyond their obviously hostile intent. "They're not just ships," Asterix observed through their mental link. "The Prime Collective vessels are partially organic. They grow rather than being built, and they can adapt to threats in real time. That explains the strange energy signatures, Elena reported from her science station. The ships are showing biological functions integrated with mechanical systems. The enemy fleet moved toward the inner system with mechanical precision, but Marcus noticed they were following predictable patterns that suggested programmed behavior rather than creative tactics. Artificial intelligences, he realized. They're following pre-programmed strategies based on previous encounters with dragons, which means they're not prepared for human unpredictability, Admiral Vance concluded. All ships prepare to execute Pattern Omega-7. Pattern Omega-7 was a tactical formation that had been developed specifically for bonded pair coordination. Human ships would provide mobility and distraction while Dragon partners channeled energy through specially modified weapon systems. The result was firepower that far exceeded the sum of its parts. Enemy fleet is moving into assault formation, Commander Thorne reported. They're targeting the sanctuary just as predicted. All bonded pairs initiate coordination protocols, Marcus ordered. Through the network of mental connections, he felt 46 other partnerships synchronizing their actions. The sensation was incredible, like being part of a vast intelligence that could think at the speed of light and act with perfect precision. The battle began as the human fleet appeared to retreat, drawing the Prime Collective ships away from the sanctuary and deeper into the system. The enemy responded predictably, accelerating their pursuit and preparing for what they assumed would be an easy victory against fleeing opponents. They realized their mistake when the Dragon partnerships revealed themselves. Happy to retreating suddenly turned and unleashed devastating energy weapons powered by Dragon partners hidden within their hulls. The coordinated attack struck the Prime Collective fleet with surgical precision, targeting their command ships and communication nodes. Direct hit on their flagship, reported Captain Martinez from the heavy cruiser Determination, but the ship is regenerating its damage. Repeat, the enemy vessel is healing itself. Biological regeneration systems, Asterix confirmed through the bond, will need to overwhelm their ability to self-repair. Marcus felt the collective intelligence of the bonded pairs analyzing the problem and developing solutions in real time. Within seconds, they had identified the optimal targeting patterns to prevent enemy regeneration. All ships, focus fire on junction points between organic and mechanical systems, he ordered. Those are their weak spots. The human fleet executed the new strategy with perfect coordination, each ship timing its attacks to complement the others. The result was devastating. Prime Collective vessels that had seemed invulnerable began exploding as their hybrid systems failed catastrophically, but the enemy adapted faster than expected. The surviving ships began coordinating their own defenses, using swarm tactics to overwhelm individual targets. We're losing ships, Admiral Vance reported as the destroyer Vigilance exploded under concentrated enemy fire. They're learning from our tactics too quickly. Through the bond network, Marcus felt the solution forming in the collective consciousness of the partnerships. Dragon pairs prepare for direct intervention. What happened next would become legendary in both human and dragon history. The dragon partners aboard the human ships revealed themselves, emerging from specially designed launch bays and taking to space in their natural forms. But they weren't fighting alone. Each dragon maintained its mental bond with its human partner, creating a level of coordination that seemed to defy physics. Dragons and human ships moved together like parts of a vast organism, covering each other's weaknesses and amplifying each other's strengths. Energy weapons powered by dragon ability struck with human precision, while human tactical innovation guided dragon power to maximum effect. The Prime Collective ships, programmed for individual combat, had no response to such integrated cooperation. Within an hour, the entire enemy fleet had been destroyed or disabled. "Victory!" Admiral Vance announced, but her tone carried concern rather than celebration. "Sensor teams, I want a full analysis of any escape pods or communication drones. We need to know if they got a message out." The answer came within hours, and it was what everyone had feared. Analysis of the battle debris revealed communication equipment that had transmitted a complete record of the engagement before the ships were destroyed. "They know everything now," Elena reported grimly. "Our capabilities, our coordination methods, our ship configurations. The main Voidbringer force will be prepared for exactly what we showed them today." Through the bond, Marcus felt Asterix's ancient memories stirring with recognition and dread. "How long before they arrive in force?" he asked. "The Voidbringers do not rush," Asterix replied through their connection. "But when they come, they bring extinction." "Based on what the Prime Collective reported, I estimate we have perhaps a month before the main force arrives. A month to prepare for a force that destroyed the Dragon Empire at its height," Admiral Vance said quietly. "What are our chances?" Marcus shared a mental consultation with Asterix, accessing both human tactical doctrine and ancient dragon wisdom. The answer was not encouraging. "Honestly, against a full Voidbringer assault force, our current capabilities won't be enough. But we have advantages they've never faced before. Human adaptability combined with dragon knowledge, fighting for our homes instead of just territory. And," Asterix added through their bond, "we have something the ancient dragons never possessed. The motivation that comes from protecting not just our own species but our chosen partners and allies. Then we have a month to become something more than we are." Admiral Vance decided. "All ships prepare for intensive integration training. If we're going to face extinction, we'll face it as partners." Through the network of bonded pairs, Marcus felt a wave of determination that transcended species boundaries. Dragons and humans together, facing impossible odds, but refusing to surrender. It was, he realized, exactly the kind of impossible situation that brought out the best in both their peoples. "The Voidbringers are about to learn," he said with grim satisfaction, "that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds." 28 days after the Prime Collective battle, the Voidbringers arrived. Marcus stood in the command center of the rebuilt sanctuary, now transformed into the nerve center of the largest defensive fleet in galactic history. Through his bond with Asterix, he could sense the approach of something so alien and terrifying that even dragon memories struggled to comprehend it fully. "Emergent signatures detected," reported Commander Singh from the sensor array. "Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace across 7 different vectors." The main display showed the impossible scope of what they faced. Ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect geometric patterns, their forms defying conventional understanding of both physics and aesthetics. Some appeared to be constructed from crystallized darkness. Others seemed to bend light around themselves until they became visible only as distortions in space. "Count!" Admiral Vance asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer would be devastating. "Still calculating," Singh replied, his instruments struggling to track vessels that seemed to exist only partially in normal space. "Minimum 800 confirmed contacts, but our sensors are detecting interference that suggests many more." Through the bond network, Marcus felt the collective response of all 46 dragon-human partnerships. Fear, yes, but also determination that bordered on the supernatural. A month of intensive training had forged them into something unprecedented in galactic history. "All ships, implement defensive formation Omega Alpha," Marcus ordered, his voice carrying harmonics that reflected his bond with Asterix. Dragons to deep space positions, human vessels to tactical support vectors. The fleet that spread out to meet the Voidbringer Armada was unlike anything that had ever existed. 300 human ships, each enhanced with dragon technology and crewed by personnel who had trained extensively in interspecies cooperation. 47 dragons, including Asterix herself, who had chosen to fight in their natural forms rather than remaining bonded within human vessels. But most importantly, the entire force was linked through the bond network, creating a tactical awareness that allowed instant communication and coordination across light years of space. "Enemy vessels are moving into attack formation," reported Captain Torres from the Defiant. "But their approach pattern is different from anything in Dragon archives. They're adapting their tactics based on the Prime Collective data." Through the shared consciousness of the bonded pairs, Marcus felt ancient dragon knowledge combining with human tactical analysis to interpret the enemy's movements. The Voidbringers were approaching in 3 waves, each designed to test different aspects of the Allied defense. "First wave is probing for weaknesses in our coordination," he announced to the fleet. "Second wave will target our heaviest units. Third wave." He paused as the implications became clear through his bond with Asterix. "Third wave is targeting the sanctuary directly," Asterix completed through their mental link. "I believe that destroying our command center will collapse our coordination network." "They're not wrong," admitted Commander Thorne from his position coordinating dragon flight patterns. "The sanctuary is serving as our primary communication node. If we lose it, we lose our tactical advantage. Then we make sure we don't lose it," Admiral Vance stated firmly. "All units, prepare to receive enemy contact." The first wave of Voidbringer ships struck with overwhelming force. Energy weapons that seemed to drain light itself lanced across space, while exotic matter projectiles twisted the very fabric of reality as they passed. But the Allied fleet was ready. Human ships enhanced with dragon shields absorbed punishment that should have destroyed them instantly. Dragon participants channeled power through the bond network, allowing damaged vessels to regenerate their defenses in real time. Most importantly, the instant communication provided by the bonded pairs allowed the fleet to coordinate its response with perfect timing. "Enemy vessels are adapting faster than predicted," Elena reported from her science station. "They're analyzing our defensive patterns and modifying their attacks accordingly." "Then we modify ours as well," Marcus replied, feeling the collective intelligence of the bond network already developing new strategies. "All ships implement Pattern Chaos 7. Pattern Chaos 7 was a formation that had been developed specifically for fighting adaptive enemies. Instead of following predictable tactical doctrine, each ship was assigned random movement patterns that changed every few minutes. The result was a defense that appeared chaotic to outside observers, but was actually carefully coordinated through the bond network. The Voidbrin,